Two friends and I got bored one summer night and decided to drive up into the mountain to a spot that overlooks the town. It's a rough dirt road and we were in a VW Rabbit. We finally make it to the little clearing on the side of the road and pull over. There are no houses on this road for miles, and we didn't see any other vehicles the rest of the night. So we get out of the car. It's pitch black except the lights of the little town at the bottom of the clearing, miles away. We're all kind of bullshitting as we get out and something gets our attention. We all turn and look at the same time and see this thing running through the woods about 30 feet from us. Now this thing looked like a person, except it was glowing. Remember those glow-in-the-dark stars you could stick to your ceiling? It glowed at about that intensity. So we watched this thing run, pushing branches out of its way and whatnot. We all get back in the car without a word and start driving off in total silence. About 30 seconds later, someone finally says, "What the fuck did we just see?" The best answer we could come up with, as crazy as it sounds, was that we saw a ghost. All three agreed we saw the exact same thing. So a couple years go by, and I'm with the older brother of one of my best friends, and we're just shooting the shit. I bring this story up expecting him to laugh at me, and he gets a shocked look on his face and asks if I'm serious. Apparently his teacher in high school had told them he saw the exact same thing run across that road in front of him one night. Made me feel a little less crazy. Around a decade ago, I experienced what can only be called an inner body hallucination. It started with a numb feeling in my ankle that slowly spread up my leg over time, but when the feeling got to my knee, things got very weird. It felt like there was a direct link between my ankle and my neck to the point where if one moved, the other moved automatically at the exact same time, the exact same amount. It was not possible for me to stop one from moving when I moved the other, and they would move at a precision that would take someone a very long time to be able to fake properly. Obviously, this started freaking me out hardcore, and luckily I had already been taken to the hospital and was waiting in the waiting room while this was happening. But the feeling kept crawling up my body, now affecting both of my legs. Eventually, it reached my rib cage, and that's when things truly started to get freaky. It felt like the bones in my rib cage were slowly starting to come loose and float around in my stomach in a clockwise manner that exactly matched the rhythm of my breathing. Now, by this time, I was completely hysterical as it truly felt like my bones were coming loose, and I was convinced I was dying. It was not for almost 30 minutes after that, when they took an X-ray of my chest and showed it to me, that I began to understand that nothing was happening to me, and that it was all in my head. The doctors at the hospital obviously assumed that I was on some kind of hallucinogen, and so I was tested for every drug they could think of, but I came back completely clean. They were completely mystified as to what could have caused it, as I had never had anything remotely similar happen in the past. The scariest part was that it felt so real. It felt no different than any other physical sensation in my body, and it dawned on me that I would not be able to trust my physical senses. There was no difference between the hallucinated physical sensations and any other sensations I had or have felt since. Over 10 years later now, and I still do not know what causes it. From time to time, if I think about it too much, I will still have ripples of the effect occur. Specifically, it will feel as if a bone near my kidney or some other organ in that area is coming loose and revolving in a circle around that organ with each breath I take. I haven't really ever told this story to many people, as I know most would just assume I am fucking crazy. I lived in a haunted house for 8 months. Let me preface this with saying I really don't believe in ghosts. There's always some more rational explanation to these kind of phenomena, but sometimes that explanation can't be easily found, as with this house. Me and 5 guys rented it together. I woke up many times from hearing people rummaging around in different parts of the house, especially when I was home alone. Light switches switching on and off, toilets flushing, doors banging, shit like that. Lots of sleep paralysis too, and I wasn't the only one noticing this shit. Worse though, was the eerie sensation of waking up and sensing a child is creeping into your bed behind your back and tucking itself in. But there were no children living with us. These days, I'm thinking it must have been some sort of carbon monoxide poisoning or something like that going on. I'm at a loss for rational explanations. I worked at a Subway during a period of time where a serial robber was hitting multiple Subways each day and becoming violent. I worked at a particular Subway that was the easiest target of them all. One employee at night, not in a shopping center, off from the main road, small parking lot covered with trees. The cops would actually come check on me at night due to how sure they were this dude was gonna rob it. One night a guy came in and started fidgeting with the front door. He said he thought something was wrong with it, but then said it was fine. The guy was really nice the whole time, but started asking some odd questions about what time I get out with all the robberies happening. I felt it was odd and lied saying I left later than I did. Later that night I arm the alarm and go to close the door, but it won't close at all. The alarm goes off. Cops fly in the parking lot. One cop starts looking at the door and finds a really small magnet that stopped the door from closing. He placed it there so I couldn't close the door. During this time, a car rolls by slowly, but everyone wrote it off as someone thinking it got robbed. A couple days later, they catch him, and it's that dude. I see footage of his car, and it was the car that drove by while I was still with the cop. If you don't know about the Ever Dream This Man website that was circulating a few years back, it was a website with an image of balding man explaining how millions of people see him in their dreams every night. This is important for later. When I was 12, I used to sleep with my bedroom door open. I also have a bad habit of constantly waking up in the middle of the night due to insomnia. My bed was always up against the wall, so I'd either sleep facing the wall or looking out at the rest of my room. One night, I wake up as usual, facing the wall. I turn around to shift sleeping positions, and there's a face just floating in the doorway, staring at me with a slight grin. I nope the fuck out and immediately turn back around, terrified beyond belief. Too scared to do anything except close my eyes and hope I can fall asleep again, which I do, relatively quickly. Now, onto that man from earlier. I didn't know it at the time, but that man on the website looked remarkably similar to the brief glimpse I got in my bedroom doorway. If that wasn't freaky enough, a few months after visiting that site, a bit after that terrifying event, my dad calls my brother and I into the living room. He wants to know who printed out this image, and he shows it to us. It was the poster from the website. I distinctly remember I never hit print when I visited it, so no one had any idea where TF it came from. All I remember is being scared shitless because I still had that disembodied face fresh in my mind, and I was convinced it was linked to that site somehow. After that, I've always slept with my door closed. The website later turned out to be a hoax, but the memory still lingers with me. I was probably 9 years old, in about 1995. At that time, all the schools and parents were warning us of stranger danger. It seemed like a lot of kids were getting kidnapped because they were being tricked into helping the kidnappers find a lost pet. One day I was riding my bike alone on our street, a fairly populated street, lots of kids out playing and whatnot, and a green two-door car pulled up with a woman driving and a guy in the passenger seat. The guy calls out the window to me, "Hey kid, we lost our dog, can you help us find her?" I can still remember the feeling I felt. It was like sirens were going off, and I thought for a split second that this was it. I was going to be kidnapped. A rush of what felt like burning hot adrenaline shit through my body. I felt like I could hear everything 10x louder and see everything 10x better. I've never felt anything like that before. I hopped off my bike, pulled the front tire up so I could turn around faster, and I booked it home. I was shaking and tears were pouring down my face, even though I wasn't crying. I got home and told my mom what happened. She called the police, but I'm not sure if the people were ever caught. Crazy. My cousin and I were probably targeted for a scam, but I still don't know how or why. We are 6 years apart, but went to the same high school at different times. Small school, graduating classes about 60. Years later, we are on a road trip together several states away and decide to stop at a Huddle House for coffee. We walk in, and the guy at the next table turns around and smiles and says, "You went to Anytown High School," right when we say yes. He says he and his girlfriend also at the table, smiling and not talking, went there too. We didn't recognize them, but smiled politely, commented it was a small world. He starts to rapidly talk about different things from the school, just disjointed comments that were a bit odd. He talked like a salesman, almost. At first we smile and nod, but he had weird facts wrong. So we ask what year he graduated. He claimed not to remember, so we asked follow-up questions, and he gets cagey. Suddenly the girlfriend goes, "This isn't working," and they suddenly pay and leave, food untouched. We since have determined they didn't go to our school, and have tried to figure out how he knew what he did, to no avail. I was about 10 and I had a huge fear of someone being in my house, to the point where I wouldn't go to the basement because it scared me. But I am glad I had that fear, because one day during the summer I was trying to go to sleep and I heard a noise from above me and I freaked out. I then noticed over the coming days that my room was really hot, and I thought this was strange because we just got new air vents put in. My dad was checking them out and went to get some sort of tool when I saw the scariest image possible. There was a skinny man looking at me and my dad from the vent in my ceiling. I froze and pretended not to notice him, and I went to get my dad, and me in my 10-year-old mind was instantly thinking run with him out of the house. But I have 2 cats and we're scared to leave them. So I grabbed a paper towel and a pen and wrote in my chicken scratch handwriting, "There is a man in my vent." But he couldn't read it and asked what it meant, and that's when we heard a thud, and he looked at it again and must have put it together, because he grabbed me and called the police. When my mom got home, she got to see the man being dragged out of the house in cuffs. Even though he was caught and I still had a somewhat happy ending, the image of looking up and seeing his face and being so petrified I couldn't move or scream still haunts me. When I was about 5, I was visiting my grandma in the city with my mom, dad, and sister. We were walking towards the city center, so it was pretty crowded. I remember letting go of my dad's hand and then feeling him grab back hold of it a few moments later. I kept walking, I don't know how far. I hear my dad shouting from behind me and grabbing my other arm. I hear him say sorry, and I look up and I realize I was holding hands with an old man that I didn't know. My dad assumed that I'd accidentally grabbed onto this man's hand thinking he was my dad. I remember him pulling me away all embarrassed, and I was just thinking, but the man grabbed my hand? So basically I think some guy tried to snatch me out of a crowded area. I still don't understand why my dad thought I grabbed onto his hand. My parents were normally quite paranoid about strangers. He must have been distracted when talking to my grandma. When I was 16, I had just gotten my license, as well as my first after-school job. Since school ended about an hour before I had to be at work, I would sometimes park in the adjacent parking lot and take a nap. This was a shopping strip with a grocery store, restaurants, and a bank on a fairly busy Friday afternoon. As I'm sitting there drifting off, I see a black Denali pull up behind me, blocking my car in the spot. A gentleman jumps out in a business suit and asks if I can help him. He looks nice enough, and I'm assuming he is looking for directions. He starts to explain to me that his wife and he were supposed to be signing for a loan at the bank behind us today so that they can purchase a boat, but she is stuck in a meeting and can't make it. He then asks if I wouldn't mind posing as her and singing the documents for her. I'm completely blown away, but super shy and feel the need to let him down easy. Stupid, I know. So I tell him I don't think they'll believe I am your wife. He then tells me it's fine, he has her license with him, which he shows me, and she has the same hair eye color as me, so they won't know. At this point, I'm freaking out. I start to notice how disheveled he looks. He's sweating, and surprise, surprise, ... no wedding ring. I just want him away from my car, so I start telling him I can't help him, that he needs to go ask someone else. He says it's fine, it'll be quick, just jump in my truck, and I'll take you over there. Like I said, this bank was in the same shopping strip, there would be no need to drive to it. Even in my gullible teenage mind, I know this story is complete bull. I'm telling him no over and over, while scanning the parking lot for anyone who might be noticing, but of course no one has. He then starts getting irate, telling me that I'm perfect and the only one who can do it, how beautiful I am, can he at least take me to dinner, and so on. I start trying to close my window, and he reaches through, grabs my shoulder, and starts trying the door handle, which was luckily locked. I'm so frozen, I don't even really react. I can't go anywhere as he's blocking me in. Suddenly, and I'm not really sure why, I just blurt out that I'm only 16. And for some reason that freaks him out. He slowly backs away, gets in his truck, and leaves. I called the police afterwards, but they never followed up with me. But I just know he had found that license and made up that story as a way to lure women into his truck. And it scared the hell out of me that he could have convinced someone before. Years later, I spotted him on the sex offender registry for assault.